Please record. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long morning. And you get attorneys up here and they start talking. And sometimes you sit here and you say, my God, when are they going to shut up? Well, we have the burden of proof, the state. And when we got up here and we were picking a jury and we were doing voir dire, one of the things that we talked about, and one thing that I said, is that we accept that burden of proof. We never indicated that it wasn't our burden of proof. Now, Mr. Clark makes a big thing, the state has the burden, the state has the burden. We've never said that we didn't have the burden. Never did, never will. That's our system. And we believe in it. Ms. Romo, Ms. Duke, myself, everybody that works for the state believes in that system. Now, what Mr. Clark indicates about reasonable doubt. What is reasonable doubt? When you go to surgery, when you say, you know what, I'm going to take that surgery, it's not 100%. No doctor tells you, they make you sign a form. Hey, you know what, it may not go as well as we're saying. But it gets to a point where you say, you know what, I'm going to do it. And what did I say in voir dire? It's based on common sense. That's what I read to you. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason and common sense. For the last hour that Mr. Clark has been talking about, what he wants you to do is say, believe in common sense when it looks good for him. Don't believe common sense, your common sense when it is the state. And I say that because when we talk about credibility, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about credibility, we talk about you alone are the judges of credibility of the witnesses and the weight to be given the testimony of them. You should take into account the witness' truthfulness or untruthfulness, ability and opportunity to observe, memory, manner while testifying, any interest, bias, or prejudice the witness may have, and the reasonableness of the witness's testimony considered in the light of all the evidence. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've all had occasion at some point in our life to have a piece of rope. And how is that piece of rope made? By individual strands. And each individual strands are put together until it becomes a rope. Now that's a case also. You look at all of the evidence. You look at everything. Mr. Clark wants to make Tabitha Littles our only star witness. She is a piece. She is one strand of the rope. That's what she is. Mr. Clark says, hey, look, don't look at the forensic because it's not there. Don't look at the medical because it's not there. It's all about Tabitha Littles. And I'll get to Tabitha Littles in a minute. Now, why doesn't he want you to look, as he said, there was no reconstruction? Well, if you're saying, if we were to believe Mr. Clark, well, Tabitha Littles just, she's a liar, and therefore, why would we have a reconstruction? But when people are moving and things are happening in such rapid succession, pretty hard to say it's not an accident. Where you have a vehicle, it hits another vehicle, you know what happened. Here is people coming out of cars, shooting, things are happening so quickly. If we had done the reconstruction, what would Mr. Clark have been arguing? Oh, all speculative. I like the way Mr. Clark says, it's all speculative when it's the state, but it's not speculative when it comes to him and Mr. Romero. Now, let's look at the medical. Now, if it were true that Mr. Clark says it's Tabitha Littles, she's the one who shot Officer Bennett. That's basically what he's proposing. Now, Officer Benner was shot in the shoulder. Now, let's just assume Officer Benner's running by you, you're turning, you have a gun, and you're going to shoot him. You're not going to shoot him on the side shoulder. You're going to shoot him square in the back. Now, what makes more sense? What does common sense tell you? Officer Benner was running toward the door. Oh, heck, I see a gun. Starts to turn whichever way. Turn, wham, gets hit from the side, comes across. The bullet didn't come straight from the back out the front chest. That's common sense, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you would have to believe. That Tabitha Littles shot him straight in the back. And then common sense says, Tabitha Littles goes and shoots. I don't know how this is done, ladies and gentlemen. You saw how big Tabitha Littles is. Pretty remarkable. And then says, throws the gun into the car. Why in the heck would Tabitha Littles throw a gun in the car? Why didn't she get in the car? That's common sense. I mean, the first thing you would do is say, holy, I shot a police officer. I'm getting the heck out of here. You're not going to stick around. You're not going to get rid of the gun and throw it to Andrew Romero. Doesn't make sense. Common sense. That's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's take a look at Mr. Clark says, don't look at the accelerator. It didn't matter. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. It's just Tabitha Little. Again, the piece of the strings that create the rope. I can't see this now. I'm going to take this out. The acceleration marks. You heard Officer Milligan indicate that the tire that was causing it was the left driver's side tire. It was an odd tire. That caused the spin, the transfer of the energy when a car has that. If that's the truth, this is the left tire. The car is sitting like this. The door is sitting right here. That's what makes sense. That's common sense. But they don't want you to look at that. Oh, heck no. Why? Because it puts the car right about where Tabitha Little said it was. But don't look at the firearm, Mr. Guetta. I mean, don't look at the ejection pattern. Now, if you're shooting out the door, and here's the door. Let's look right here. Door's sitting right here. You open the door. Officer Benner is around here. The ejection pattern is going to go out and to the back. Now, if Tabitha Littles was a shooter, she'd be shooting. The ejection pattern would hit the car and drop. Does that make sense to what the evidence shows you? Or does it make sense that you're shooting out the door and the pattern is going out to where it's right here? Don't look at that. Mr. Clark doesn't want you to look at that. That's what Tabitha Little said. Oh, Tabitha Little's a liar. Forensic evidence corroborates her. It ties in the strings to the rope. Now, the interesting thing also from Mr. Guetta is, what does he say? The casings come from that 9mm. No question. Again, Again, you have to believe that Tabitha shot him, threw the gun in this panic. Well, figuring Officer Benner is between her and the door. She'd have to wait till Officer Benner hit the ground, step over, throw the gun to the driver's side, because you couldn't do it any other way. Officer Benner would have been right in the way. Shoots him. Where are you going to throw the gun? How are you going to get back in the car? How is Andrew Romero going to get it? Because he ended up with it. Tell me, does that make any sense? Now the other thing that's ironic is this. G28. What did Steve Guetta say? That jacket, it had separated, came from the gun. The shooter is shooting this way. Wouldn't you think that that jacket would have ended up over here if it was Tabitha Little's shooting? Does it make sense? As Steve Guetta said, that could have been through the pass-through of the leg. The jacket went through, it separates, it has a tendency to separate, and that's where the jacket ended up. They talk about, well, there's 4 casings, well, what happened to the other core of that jacket? Went somewhere, don't know, in that parking lot. It's a little piece of metal, couldn't find it. Now tell me, what makes sense? They don't want you to look at the evidence, they don't want you to look at the forensic, because it corroborates Tabitha Little. Now, let me get my notes over there. Now, you say the DNA doesn't prove who shot him. We're not saying. The DNA person says, I get the evidence and I put it on. But when you talk about credibility, like Mr. Clark says, and which I read, you have to not only judge the credibility of our witnesses, you have to judge the credibility of their witnesses. You bring on a witness that says, oh, there's contamination, possible contamination. Was there anything shown to you that it was contaminated? Nothing. He didn't have anything. He didn't have squat. What I think Dr. Spence wants to do is he wants to tell the FBI and everybody else what to do. Unfortunately, he hasn't tested anything for how many years? Years. He has his office in his house, which is fine. But when you're doing DNA, don't you want to be in a laboratory? Testing, making sure what you're about to testify to a jury in a homicide case is accurate, is credible? Or is it a way to show, don't look at Andrew Romero, look at me here. You know, I saw Americans Got Talent the other day. Pretty good magician. Had us looking here while he was doing things here. Again, where's the casings? Don't look at the casings. Came from the gun. Right here. And you have the evidence. You can take it back. They're all in a room. What is ironic about one of them, and you have to look at it, is one is farther up than the other. Would that mean that maybe somebody shot, and made sure? Now, you know, he doesn't talk about that the DNA came back 1.79 quintillion. My God, you'd have to look at 1.79 quintillion people before you have the same DNA as Andrew Romero. There's only 7 billion people on Earth. It's Andrew Romero. He's got it. And they're saying, well, Tabitha Little threw the gun at him after she shot Officer Benner. Wow, that is amazing. Shoot yourself in the foot, throw the gun, and you stay there. Tabitha Littles is not no angel. She never said she was. But I think she's smart enough to say, if I shot the guy, I'm hitting the heck out of there. Now, GSR. They made a big thing of GSR. Why would you care if Officer Benner had GSR? He didn't pull out his gun. He didn't pull out his taser. Why would you care? I mean, why the big thing? Look at me here. Don't look at Romero. The cartridge in the Durango. What does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? What did Steve Guerra say in his 30-some years of experience as an APD officer, as gone a crime scene manager? It's not uncommon for somebody, even if it's loaded, to rack it before you're going to use it. You want to make dang sure. It's found on the floorboard. You'd have to say that Tabitha Little was flying out the door, racking it, falling down, doing a somersault, let Officer Benner run by, shoot him in the back, throw the gun, well, shoot herself in the foot, first of all, and then throw the gun. Is that common sense, ladies and gentlemen? Tell me, is that common sense? Does that make sense? Now, you know, what is ironic about the whole thing, I was told that when I use the word ironic, it really doesn't mean ironic, but what's funny about the whole thing is this. They attacked J.D. Stalter for the identification. They attacked Tamara Andrews for the identification. How could he? Veronica Stalter said he was thin, skinny, short hair, Hispanic. But you know what got me throughout the whole trial is what Ms. Leo said in opening statement. Transcript. She said, Andrew was her boyfriend. They were driving together that day with Andrew in the passenger seat. She admitted to it in opening statement. Why would you attack J.D. Stalter? He identified Mr. Romero. He was the passenger. Why would you do that? Knowing you have already said it. Does it make sense? Or is it, look at me here, don't look at Romero. Muddy the water. Hope that you don't use your common sense. It just doesn't make sense. Now, they also attacked Tabitha Littles. You know, ladies and gentlemen, you can't have it both ways. He's right. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, you know, Andrew Romero was a junkie, an addict. Oh, he was using drugs, and maybe if he did it, he was intoxicated. Either he did it or he didn't do it. Why would he even be arguing intoxication? Tell me, does that make common sense? He didn't do it. Why were we talking about intoxication? We're not talking about intoxication. Tabitha Littles indicated, and I pulled a transcript of what her testimony was. She was asked, now on the way to Rio Rancho, were you guys still getting high? Yes. Was it just methamphetamine or was heroin involved at any point? At that time, we were just doing meth, smoking it. So when Mr. Clark tells you he was fixing up, that's not what she testified to. Transcript says it. She didn't testify to that. Again, look here, not here. Now, He also says, well, you have to believe her because, he was fixing up and this, that, and the other thing when it's convenient for him. Believe Tabitha at certain points, not the points that are favorable to me. Don't believe her that are corroborated by forensic evidence and other corroborating evidence. But again, on opening statement, she managed to come up with a lie to save her own hide. That doesn't indicate that she was confused about what actually happened to her. They were both smoking marijuana. Both of them knew what they were doing. We never said that Tabitha Littles was an angel. In fact, I asked her that. Are you an angel? No. She's had a rough life. No question about it. She's going to prison. She came from prison to testify here, and she went back after testifying to go back to prison. What makes sense, ladies and gentlemen? He wants to say, oh, she saved her thing. The plea bargain had safeguards. She's not going to get off of the trafficking because that's not our case. That was not what it was about. And she pled to what she did. You'd have to believe that Tabitha Littles was the shooter. Nothing shows that she's the shooter. Nothing. She's out of the vehicle. In fact, they bring Barbara Myers up. What did Barbara Myers say? There was a woman out in the front going like this. She was a pissed off girlfriend. As Miss Leo said, Andrew was her boyfriend. She'd be pissed off too if you got shot in the foot by your boyfriend and left there to take the rap after he shot and killed Officer Benner. Now, she pled to. He talked about, well, Tabitha Little had no remorse. Well, Ms. Leos has already put him as the passenger. Officer Benner only ran 2 names. Nobody, it's amazing, nobody of all this stuff saw any other person, just the 2. And who left the scene to let Officer Benner die? So if you're going to call the kettle black, don't look in the mirror. Because you're just as cold and callous if that's what you're saying. Isn't that what common sense tells us? Car keys. Wow. Now we're talking about the police officers somehow manufacturing the car keys somewhere. Now, how in the heck did the police move the vehicle if they didn't get the car keys from somebody? Right? Common sense. They got him from Andrew Romero. He had them in his pocket. What did Tabitha Littles testify to that was also confiscated from Andrew Romero? His stuff. His paraphernalia. And what did she say? That's my pipe. Amazing. Andrew Romero had her pipe. Now tell me, he kept the pipe, he kept the drugs, he got them. Nothing was confiscated from the Durango, drugs. So Tabitha Little said, yeah, I was smoking. We were fine. I put the stuff in my bra. I took off. He took off with his stuff. He was found with his stuff, as well as Tabitha Little's pipe, as well as the keys. Now he's saying, oh my God, not only did Tabitha Little throw me the gun, but she also somehow, somebody, couldn't have been Tabitha. She was at the hospital. She was in jail. How did he get the keys? Now this third person, somebody out of the blue, gives him the keys. Common sense, ladies and gentlemen. You know, Mr. Clark talks about speculation. Boy, he sure wants you to speculate. He doesn't want you to look at the evidence. He doesn't want you to look at the forensic evidence. He doesn't want you to look what's there. He wants you to say, it's all about Tabitha. Believe her when it's good for me, but don't believe her when it's not. And why would we be talking about second-degree murder, ladies and gentlemen? If what Mr. Clark is saying, hell, we don't have to talk about second degree. He didn't do it. Why would he be even out talking about it? I'm not talking about second-degree murder. Andrew Romero is guilty of first-degree deliberate intentional murder. Period. He wasn't intoxicated. Is that an excuse or a justification? And then he's offering that saying, oh, hey, if Andrew did it, it's a justification for shooting somebody, a police officer, doing his job. Justification is why somebody can go into an eating establishment that we all visit, that we have family, kids, walking to a clerk, give me your money. Wow. Yeah. You know, it's almost like saying, intoxication, I don't want to take responsibility. Tabitha Little's got up here, and she said some of the most things that, why would you, no one would have ever known. Nobody knew that where she had put her drugs. Now you're telling 16, 18 strangers, people in the audience, of the most personal thing, and you're willing to say she's not telling the truth? And she tells you who shot Officer Bennett. Andrew Romero. That's who shot Officer Bennett. Killed him. Unsuspecting. In the back. Him or the cops. He told Tabitha all the time. It'll be me or them. Because you know why? I got a 9mm. Hollow point. Ones that do damage. And who did he hit? The officer that was the least expected. And what did he do? He fled. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you know, again, I use the word ironic, and I've been told that that's not. But that day was Memorial Day, 2015. And what is Memorial Day? It's a holiday that we, the United States, has placed into gear to honor those who have died in the service of our country. Greg Benner served our country. But he will not be remembered on Memorial Day for dying for serving our country and being killed by the enemy. His family will remember him on Memorial Day like this. That's what Memorial Day. Not by the enemy. By that man right there. You know, one of the verdict forms that was read to you, that I will talk to you about. If you find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder, then you must determine beyond a reasonable doubt, at the time of the offense, Greg Benner was a peace officer who was acting in the lawful discharge of his official duty. That's pretty clear, ladies and gentlemen. He was just trying to protect our community, as he tried and he did protect our country. And the defendant knew that Greg Benner was a peace officer. Well, Leos told you on opening statement, he was a passenger. He knew she got pulled over by an officer in uniform, in a vehicle, and he shot him and killed him. And if you do that, you sign a special form saying, yes, that's what happened. As I said, and I'm going to end now, case is like a piece of rope, all intertwined together. Not one making the rope, but all making together. Tabitha Littles is only just one piece of that thread. Forensic corroborates her. The medical corroborates her. The scene corroborates her. The physical evidence that was found corroborates her. Also, Mr. Romero's own statement. Transcript of that statement.
Judge, time. Answers time.
I'm going to finish in about 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Now, his own statement. You know, Officer Andrew Romero left his signature at the scene. Left his signature on Officer Benner. We're asking you, ladies and gentlemen, to leave your signature on the verdict form. Officer Benner deserves justice, ladies and gentlemen. Hold Andrew Romero responsible. Hold Andrew Romero accountable. Thank you. Sorry, Your Honor. Thank you.
I will now ask you to return to the jury room to begin your deliberations. You will be provided a copy of the jury instructions, and the exhibits introduced as evidence will be made available to you. Prior to beginning your deliberations, you will need to select one of you to act as foreperson. That person will preside over your deliberation and will speak for the jury here in court. Forms of verdict have been prepared for your use, and they read as follows. To find the defendant Andrew Romero guilty of first-degree murder is charged in count 1. To find the defendant Andrew Romero guilty of second-degree murder is the lesser included of count 1. To find the defendant Andrew Romero not guilty of murder is charged in count 1. There's a special verdict form with respect to that count that reads as follows. If you find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder charged in count 1, then you must determine beyond a reasonable doubt whether at the time of the offense, Greg Brenner was a peace officer who was acting in the lawful discharge of an official duty, and the defendant knew that Greg Brenner was a peace officer when he was murdered. You must complete the special form to indicate your finding. The question, do you unanimously find beyond a reasonable doubt that Greg Banner was a peace officer who was acting in the lawful discharge of an official duty, and the defendant knew that Greg Banner was a peace officer when he was murdered? Answer, yes or no. There's a signature line for the foreperson. We find the defendant Andrew Romero guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count 2. We find the defendant Andrew Romero guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count 2. There's a special instruction with respect to that reads as follows. Do you unanimously find beyond a reasonable doubt that Andrew Romero committed tampering with evidence as charged in count 2 related to murder? Answer yes or no, signature line for the foreperson. And then with respect to count 2, the other alternative is we find the defendant Andrew Romero not guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count 2. We find the defendant Andrew Romero guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count 3. Special instruction that you must consider. Do you unanimously find beyond a reasonable doubt that Andrew Romero committed tampering with evidence as charged in count 3 related to murder. Question, yes or no. Signature line, foreperson. And finally, with respect to count 3, we find the defendant Andrew Romero not guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count 3. We find the defendant Andrew Romero guilty of shooting at or from a motor vehicle charged in count 4. We find the defendant Andrew Romero not guilty of shooting at or from a motor vehicle charged in count 4. We find the defendant Andrew Romero guilty of conspiracy to commit armed robbery charged in count 5. We find the defendant Andrew Romero not guilty of conspiracy to commit armed robberies charged in count 5. We find the defendant Andrew Romero guilty of aggravated fleeing a law enforcement officer charged in count 6. We find the defendant Andrew Romero not guilty of aggravated fleeing a law enforcement officer charged in count 6. And finally, with respect to count 7, we find the defendant Andrew Romero guilty of concealing identities charged in count 7. We find the defendant Andrew Romero not guilty of concealing identities charged in count 7. You will take these forms to the jury room when you have reached a unanimous agreement as to your verdict. The foreperson will sign the forms which express your verdict. You will then return all forms of verdict, these instructions, and any exhibits to the courtroom. This is the hard part for me, is I'm going to give bad news and good news to 6 people. And I'm going to ask those 6 people to remain in the courtroom, and I'm going to let the other juries go. The bad news is you've been here for 3 weeks and you don't get to decide anything. Okay. But we need you to serve in case something happened to the other, one of the permanent jury. The good news, you get to go home. Let me name the juror, the alternate juror I need for you 6 to stay here, because I need to give you folks a special instruction. The alternates are as follows: Anna Lopez, Patty Thomason, Diana. Who I did not call, go into the jury room, the other 6 stay here.
All right.
You may be seated. Usually what I do on cases is I will let the alternates go. I'll go visit you for a while and so forth and let you go. In this case, it's a little different for a couple reasons. One, we've been here for three weeks, and I want to thank you for your service. Secondly, is the jury is going to begin their deliberations in a few minutes, right? And these cases never cease to amaze me in the sense that sometimes juries come back with a real quick verdict. Sometimes they take forever. Okay? The reason I'm saying that is what I don't want to happen is the 12 begin deliberating. Something happens to them over the weekend. They're coming back and say someone gets sick, there's an accident, there's an emergency, they cannot come back. If that happens, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call one of you to come back to fill in for a permanent juror. Okay? That being said, you're still under instructions of the court, the recess instruction not to discuss the case with anyone. Okay? What I want you folks to do, though, however, is before you leave today, is make sure that I have a good phone number for you. And what will happen is one of 2 things will happen. Is if need be, I will call one of you to come in and fill in for a permanent juror who is being excused for whatever reason. Or secondly, is I will call, my office will call you either way, probably Monday, maybe even late today, depending on what happens, letting you know that the jury has reached a verdict and that you will be relieved of your duties. So take your service seriously until you get that phone call from the court. Don't discuss this case with anyone, because things happen and perhaps one of the jurors may not be available. And then what would happen, we'd call you back in and the jury would start deliberations all over again. I just don't wanna go through 3 weeks of trial, and then I let you folks go, and we come back on Monday, I only have 11 jurors, and we have to declare a mistrial because of that. So your function is real important to this court. So remember the instruction and make sure that before you leave, either my bailiff or my court reporter has a good phone number for you. I thank you for your service. I think the attorneys thank you for the service, and everyone else here thanks you for your service. So we'll be in recess at this time.